Everybody's in class got a little Google book. They got a dictionary.
No, we don't myself. Once a year.
Jacob Flatter. We are finding Jacob Flatter. I don't know.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I had some good test results, so not one good. Things came out.
What's the call? Yeah.
They got a bunch of like there's and it's science in the life.
Never told me. I never looked at what I ever told it.
Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to First Universalist of New Madison on this, I don't care if it's legally spring, it's spring to me. It's supposed to be warmer than everything next week, so we at least had one snow for the winter that lasted one day. So I guess for those of you who like Florida, that's kind of a taste of what it would be like. All right, do we have any announcements?
Well, as you saw probably in this week's posting, I just reiterated that we're not having our union service with the luncheon on Palm Sunday as we had planned, and we're going to schedule that for later. Okay, but because Derek was scheduled to come here to preach that day, okay, we didn't want to cause an inconvenience for El Dorado when they're scheduling, so they've been invited up just as guests. And I don't use that word just loosely, but as guests. And then they'll attend the service. They're welcome to attend. So they may be coming up here on Palm Sunday. They don't expect a big brunch afterward or a meal because we're going to do that much later. Okay.
So that's the 24th, Palm Sunday. Derek will be here. El Dorado is invited, and we'll have the regular donuts, snacks, that kind of thing. And then we're going to do this carry-in later because Mike's going to be in Florida that weekend, or not Florida, but India, which takes a lot longer to get to India than Florida. So you're going to be gone for 2 weeks. How long are you going to be gone?
Yeah, just 2 weeks.
Just 2 weeks.
St. Patrick's Day. I'll be back the 31st.
Okay.
Last day.
So.
And the other thing is, remember their Easter Bazaar. If you get down toward El Dorado for their Easter Bazaar, all the information for El Dorado's church on their annual Easter Bazaar, which they use as a fundraiser, it's back on a pink card there on the table. And again, if you're interested in buying their envelope, which is really great, you want to get your order in before March 4th, which is coming right up tomorrow. Or tomorrow they would accept it. The numbers on the call. Thank you.
Okay. And then Krista will be here the 7th of April. She always has an inspirational and real personal, interesting presentation. And then Derek gave me the name, and his name I can't remember, Steve. I think somebody has been at El Dorado a few times and he's interested in speaking. So I'm going to plug him in here sometime, see if we can't widen our field of interest. And I want to encourage Mike to take a lot of pictures, and please do a presentation when you get back on India. India is a pretty interesting place. There's a huge amount of poverty, but it is a dynamic, they actually have got, they've sent rockets to the moon, and we all know how good they are at call centers. Every time you call for information, you're going to get somebody from India who tells you his name is Bob or Steve. So it's a pretty dynamic place, and some place that we don't really see much about and would be interesting to learn something about. So we'll look forward to Mike's return on that and wish him travel mercies. That is a long way to go. And India, if you watch the news, there's some pretty amazing things happen in India. Two trains crash head on into each other, and so it's not the safest place to be either. So yes.
Next weekend's time change.
Oh, next week is time change. So yep, you can come early, come late. We'll be here one way or another. All right, anything else? Can't think of anything. Last week Crystal was here and I forgot Crystal was coming, so I already had the second half of Black History set up. So you're getting the last half of Black History into March. Black History kind of got the shortest month of the year anyway, so we're going to give them an extra 3 days. We're really not talking about Black History today. We're talking about Prejudice, which covers more than just Black History, but Black History was a good entry onto it. A good depiction of Prejudice is look at these two pictures, and what comes to mind when you instantly look at them, that is the same person. This depends on the way people appear, what they're dressed like, what their presentation is, what their speech is like, your preformed conditions. So that's what we're going to talk about, is what prejudice is. And I don't want people to think that prejudice is always bad. Prejudice is just experience. It's something that you've been taught, something that you've learned through your experience. You can't always take everything at face value and examine it one by one by one by one. You have to make some assumptions to move on. And that's what we're going to talk about. Okay, Prelude is 278. Get the name. So you can follow along in your hymnal. Praise be to God, the Almighty. Praise be to God the Almighty. Let me kind of throw in here how much I and we appreciate Roberta and Lloyd for their musical voluntary cooperation and contributions. New Carlisle, as my wife is playing piano for them, and she does all right, but she's not a professional piano player, but it is getting hard to find people who will play piano or organ, particularly organ, in the church. Why? Because nobody takes piano lessons anymore. Everybody is too busy on their computer games and everything else. And nobody seems to be doing the music thing like they used to. They're paying $50 for a practice or a rehearsal and $50 for the church session. They're thinking about offering $100 for rehearsal and $100 for, and this is a big church. I mean, they have like 50 to 100 people. And she has like 250 people watch her Facebook page, which is pretty incredible, people from all over the world. But anyway, they have the money so they can afford it, but they can't find anybody even for that kind of money. So we are really appreciative of Roberta and Lloyd for their contributions. Music really makes church, and I'm not one of those people for the mega churches where they have the 600 member choir and the professional band. That's like going to the Coliseum. That's not church. So pardon the side thing there. Chalice lighting, a vision for Unitarian Universalism in a multicultural world. With humility and courage born of our history, we are called as Unitarian Universalists to build the beloved community where all souls are welcomed as blessings and the human family lives whole and reconciled. With this vision in our hearts and minds, we light our chalice. And the key word there is reconciled. We do not expect perfection. We do not expect people to have the same opinions, the same ideas. There are going to be differences. People are going to disagree, but reconciliation is possible. Our opening hymn is 122. This is a typical example. This song wasn't chosen until like 2 minutes ago. There's no rehearsal. Lloyd just said, let's do this one. It sounds good. It has some kind of a religious or a Black history, Martin Luther King sound over waters, and there it went. Perfect. And actually, it was a perfect choice. Sound over all waters, reach out from all lands. The chorus of voices, the clasping of hands, rise, hope of the ages, arise like the sun, all speech flow to music, all hearts beat as one. Sing, bridal of nations with chorals of love, sing out the war vulture and sing in the dove. With glad jubilation, sing hope for the world. We, not too loudly, but we sing hope for the world. Okay. You can see by my second, prejudice takes many forms. It doesn't have to be black and white or race and white. It can be job orientation. He can do it. The affirmation is, do not fear agitation. Do not fear agitation, for agitation is the rhythm of life itself, to be put into motion, to be stirred. Do not fear the movements that decenter what you always thought permanent. You carry within the center of your understanding the compass to show you the way. Carry with you the love that will hold you, the vision that will guide you, the relationship to all beings and the world that will ground you. Go in peace and in gentle agitation to stir this world to the side of love. Go in peace and gentle agitation to stir this world to the side of love. This is a little children's overview. Let's see if it'll play.
You deal with each other.
Mark, I'll ask you that. You have little kids and you are Caucasian. How do you answer that question?
Well, I let them know that racism, unfortunately, is alive and well, and that they are not to consider the hatred that is out there that they're taught. Specifically, the Trayvon Martin case, let's address this. If roles were reversed, if Zimmerman was black and Trayvon was white, the only question is how quickly the arrest would have taken place. So if we're striving for justice, which is like cases being treated alike, let's not kid ourselves. People who don't think that racism is alive and well are either naive or they're being intellectually dishonest.
Drew, one of the things that just... Steve, I got to interrupt you because I want to ask Terry one more thing here real quick. I've got less than a minute, which is, I have basically adult kids. They're 19, 20. They're getting towards adulthood. But what do you want me to tell my kids? What do you wish I told them when they were little?
Well, this is a funny thing. There is a difference between prejudice and racism. I think that, everyone to some extent is prejudiced. You prejudge situations you come into.
So should I tell them to examine your prejudice?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Know that you have it. You have to know there's an enemy so you can defeat it.
Don't pretend you don't.
What I hate to hear people say, I don't see color. I'm colorblind. That is a lie. We all see color. We all see differences. It's okay. Now we recognize it. Let's deal with it in an honest way, and that's the only way we're going to see a bit.
All right. What I want you to keep in mind as we go through this and every day as we go forth from here, prejudice is thought. Prejudice is in your head. Discrimination is action. Everybody has prejudice. Everybody has thoughts in their head, but you don't have to act on those thoughts. The critical difference is critical thinking. Think about your actions before you do it. Think about what you say before you say it. Think about what other people are saying when they say it. That's pretty much the whole sermon, so. Okay. Joys and concerns. I know Chaz likes them short, but it's not quite going to be that short.
I have black people work with me like that, and I always treat them as human beings. Always.
Yes.
I was never prejudiced. Never. So
And sometimes, I can't emphasize this enough, sometimes your prejudice, your stereotypes are correct. I talk about this example all the time. When we go down Salem Avenue, my wife keeps saying you're prejudiced because you say this or that or something else, because I'm pretty honest when I talk to her. But as soon as we enter off of outside of Preble County to Montgomery County and start down Salem Avenue, bing, she locks all the doors on the car. I say, you're not being racist. You're being, that's a stereotype, but crime is higher here, and it's been known to happen. You stop at a stoplight and somebody jerks your door open and steals your car. So you're smart to lock your doors. That's not racism. That's dealing with reality the way it is. So I'm not telling you that thinking things are wrong is wrong. I'm telling you acting in the wrong way. And I guess we have to make a division, because when I say discrimination is actions, they're actions that are moral, that are just, that are right actions, like locking your doors if you're in an unsafe neighborhood, versus assuming, like our first picture, that a guy who looks like that is a criminal. You want to beware in case he is a criminal, but you don't want to assume he's a criminal. It's a complicated subject, and we need to keep working on it. The main thing is be aware of what's going on. So there's one for racism. Anything else?
I've got a joy.
Good.
I wrote a book.
Oh, all right.
My kids got me a subscription to Storyworth.com my last birthday.
What is it?
Story, my life story.
MyLifeStory.com?
Storyworth.com.
Storyworth?
Yeah, it has a series of questions that the kids could choose, and then I write about those questions, and then write other things. But there's 52 questions here that I've answered, and pictures and such. But first book.
Beautiful. Let's and we'll pass that along. Storyworth.com.
Storyworth.com. Yeah, the kids
That
got
is
the subscription.
for every grandparent or
Yep.
husband or wife, or even for children.
Easy way to write your life story.
And how much?
Huh?
How much?
The book in color, this one is $99.
So it's not cheap.
It's not
but
cheap.
It's got pictures, and it's got the words, and it's got a hardbound copy.
It's a quality book, that's for sure.
So that's actually pretty cheap to publish your own book.
I'm going to put one in the library,
Okay.
and I'll probably get a couple extras if somebody wants to buy some.
So I would encourage you to all write your own book for your kids or your friends or your church, and bring your pictures. I keep telling you this, bring your pictures, and we'll do a Sunday presentation of the places you've seen, the places that are meaningful to you. You don't have to say anything if you don't want. We can do it all with pictures. So I'm trying to encourage people to share the wealth, so to speak.
One of our granddaughters asked us to write something about our lives when she was in high school. Never really got around to it, but last year the kids got the subscription, and that spurred the thinking, and
Yes,
brought
and it's
on things to write about.
when you sit down with a blank paper and say, I'm going to write about my life, I mean, it's kind of overwhelming. But if people give you questions, and all
Yes.
you're doing is answering the questions,
And one brings on something else.
Yes.
Yes.
and I can see there could be a possibility of Ulysses. How many of you know what Ulysses is? Ulysses is a book that was written in the 20s and 30s about Ireland that is like 2,000 pages long and is the most boring book in the world. Literally, the guy talks about what he does every day, what he eats, who he talks to, what he sees. There's no plot, there's no nothing. It's just the story of his life. And somehow it became an international bestseller, and I'm not sure exactly why. But I was living in New Paris, where I live now. I'm working in Troy at the hospital. So every day I had an hour drive one way and an hour drive the other way. So I had books on tape. And it took me a month and a half, but I have listened to the entire book of Ulysses, and that is my understanding of the book of Ulysses, that even listening to it is the most boring thing in the world. So, but I can say that I have done the book Ulysses, so I can mark that off my bucket list. All right. We still have our flowers for Ukraine. How many of you know what a shill is, or a dupe? Or what's a couple other words? Where's my thing here? Patsy, a pawn. There are people in the United States who are supporting Russia against Ukraine. I don't understand that. They are Putin pawns. One of them actually went to Russia and interviewed him with a bunch of softball questions that even Putin made fun of. And then he went to a Russian grocery store, I think I've told you this before, and talked about how cheap everything was. You could buy all the basic groceries you need for $100 for a week. Not mentioning the fact that the average wage in Russia is $200 a week. So the Russian grocery stores, and most of those prices are subsidized. That's not the real price that everybody pays. And then he went to the subway station, to one subway station in Moscow that has chandeliers and big paintings on the wall, and talked about how clean it was and how cheap it was. But he forgot to mention the price that people pay for living in Russia and having cheap food and cheap transportation and cheap heating and cooling. Is you can't say anything you want to say. Navalny was murdered in prison for being against the Russian system, for being against Putin, murdered in prison. At his funeral, 500 and 600 people were arrested for attending his funeral. That is the difference. And the people in the United States who are supporting Russia against the Ukrainians are losing ground now. Because the Congress, the Republican conservative Congress will not send American supplies to the Ukraine. They say there's no point in supporting Ukraine. They are running out of shells, they're running out of ammunition, and they are losing ground because of this. That's all I can say there. So we have a lighter candle for Ukraine.
Jim, let's light a candle for Palestine, those residents there that are starving. The 30,000 loss of life, Palestine, the air drops that will scratch the surface can also be extremely risky diplomatically as well as logistically. In the news every day, you see the horrors of a dead child in some parent's arm, or maimed children and adults going into hospitals that are totally bedlam
and being attacked.
And have been attacked at the same time. Something has to give there. And I just feel that night after night you watch it on the news, or you hear it, or you see it in social media. I don't take sides on that, but it truly is going down in history. It's just one of the most tragic events, at least recent times. It's like a candle for those individuals that they maybe get some support as their country is totally destroyed.
And it's like looking in the mirror and looking at yourself. There is no right or wrong. Each side has points that they make. And as we reiterate every week, each side does not see the other side as real people. They do not give
the horrors of war instead, and we get to watch it if we choose, or be bombarded by it.
Yes.
In our safe, somewhat contentious but safe world we live in.
And that is the role that prejudice plays in that situation. I'm sure you saw last week when the aid trucks got in, and then they were swarmed by the people who were starving to death. They got too close to the Israeli tanks, and the Israelis opened fire. The Israelis said that everybody was killed and crushed by the trucks driving through, and they were killed in the stampede away from the fire. Another point of information was the independent United Nations people at the hospital said most of the people brought to the hospital were shot. So they were not crushed or stampeded, they were actually shot. But the Israelis have a point. Remember last week or 2 weeks ago, we talked about the ambulance, the little girl that was trapped in the car and called for help on the cell phone, and they sent the ambulance to her. The little girl was shot and killed. The ambulance drivers were both shot and killed. Hamas uses the ambulance, they use ambulances to run guns and fighters through the city, depending on the Israelis not to shoot them. Hamas has, and they have found prisoners in the hospitals. They found tunnels underneath the hospitals. Hamas uses the hospitals as places of security, figuring they won't be attacked if they put up their offices in the hospital. The Israelis are between a rock and a hard place. There is no absolute right or wrong on either one. I don't have the answer, but something has to be done. People have to reach out and make a choice. We are airdropping supplies, meals ready to eat, MRI or MREs. That's like a drop in the bucket, but we know the real reason they're doing it, don't we? It's not because we're really thinking it's going to do any good. It's so the rest of the world will see that the United States does care about what's going on, and is trying to do something. Instead of saying, you sit by and do nothing, we can say, we're dropping food that we can get in. It's a difficult situation because the United States does not control Israel. We do not tell Israel what to do. We give them billions of dollars, and we give them the bombs and shells to blow up the Palestinians, which we're not giving the Ukrainians to defend themselves from the Russians. It's a complicated world, and I'm not trying to tell you there's an easy answer. I'm trying to tell you, use critical thinking. Don't take at face value what anybody tells you. Look at it and say, what's the other side of this question? All right. So we've got Israel, we've got Russia and the Ukraine. Where's my list here? And I'm going to light a candle for New Carlisle, hoping that they can find an organist or a pianist. We know how important that is, and church and music in church is like the foundation, the bedrock of church. So, all right, one more candle for those thoughts and prayers, those fears and desires that you're not able to express. Maybe you're not even aware of them. Maybe they're the kind of things that are just roaming around in the back of your mind. We hope to bring you peace. We offer support if we can provide it. All right, I kind of went all over the place on this. Let me do this one first. This will give you an idea. They may know who this is. I keep telling you to bring pictures from your past. Here you go. 1970. This is Tim on his way to Europe at the train station in Fort Wayne, Indiana, heading for New York. Well, actually, I went to Washington, D.C. first to visit friends. And I just had come from Wyoming from spending time there, so I've got my straw cowboy hat, my vest, my button shirt, my Western shirt, and my 501 button-up Levi's and my boots. And that doesn't look too weird riding around the United States in my orange backpack. If you want to know what Prejudice is, take Icelandic Air and land in Reykjavik for a one-night layover, and then walk through downtown Reykjavik dressed like this. You will know what prejudice is. You will know what happens when people are not used to seeing something and everybody that you see turns and stares at you for like 5 minutes until you walk by. We knew that the there's three other Americans on the plane, and we all were walking together, and all of us looked a little funny. Some of them were dressed like hippies with bell bottoms and flowing shirts and round glasses and long hair down to their shoulders. Europeans at this time, actually Europeans now, dress in a kind of a moderately conservative, fashionable way, but they all have basically form-fitting, nice clothes. I should have put some pictures in of that, but I'm sure you can imagine what you would see on a New York street or a Philadelphia street or a Boston street with people dressed as normal people. Europeans normally dress like that, and they don't see a lot of Americans dressed like this. So, and we could actually hear people even pointing and saying things. They were speaking in Icelandic, so we didn't know what they were saying, but you know about what they're saying. That kind of gives you a feeling of what it's like to be, suppose you're black and walk into a department store, Macy's or someplace, and people follow you around thinking you're going to shoplift something. That's the effect that prejudice can have on you. The other picture is after I'd been in Europe for 6 months. I went with a friend of mine to Ibiza, not actually Ibiza, Formentera, off the coast of Spain for vacation, and then we went to Greece. And in Athens, there was a used whatever, junk shop. I got to try on a Nazi coal scuttle helmet, and she took my picture. But you can see what I'm wearing now is the chambray shirt that I had then. That's what I'm wearing. The jeans have been cut off into shorts, and no more cowboy hat, no more pack. I had a little side bag that I carried with me, so I looked like pretty much everybody else in Greece at that time. I blended in. That is the difference. That's how you eliminate prejudice. The difficulty is if you have dark skin or black skin, you cannot blend in unless you're in a dark-skinned environment. It would be kind of the same as you going down to Salem Avenue and walking down the street. What would you feel like doing that? All right, now, this is what hit me I took off in a totally different direction. This happened last night about 10 o'clock. A friend of mine put this on the internet, and it kind of just really grabbed me. For sale, my white privilege card. 50 years old, but in mint condition. Never been used. Reason for selling, it hasn't done a thing for me. No college, no free college, no free food, no free housing, no free anything. Had to go to work every day of my life while paying a boatload of taxes to carry those who choose not to work. If interested, I prefer cash, but willing to do an even trade for a victim card, which seems much more widely accepted and comes with countless benefits. That veritably, literally screams prejudice. This is encapsulated. What does white privilege mean? Never been used, no free food, no free college, no free housing, no free anything. Do you want to know the free things you get with your white privilege card? Anybody give me some examples? I'll give you one. You can drive down the street without having the police stop you and saying, what are you doing in this neighborhood? Or do you own that car? Or, you know, what's your, I want to see your ID, I want to see your driver's license, and I want to check your car. You can go into a grocery store with a white privilege card, or not a grocery store, but like Macy's, like I said before. You can go into any department store, and the security guy does not follow you around to see if you're shoplifting. Any other examples? There's things that you can do as white people that you don't think are white privilege, but are white privilege. You can apply for a job, and if your name is some kind of weird, funny spelling from Africa, you may not even be considered for that job. They may not even look and see what you look like, but if your name looks black, you may not be considered for that job. White names don't get that. So that's kind of where we're starting on that. That led me into what prejudice is. Prejudice is thought. Prejudice, and I'm not saying that all prejudice is bad. Let's see, I think I have another one here. Anybody know who this is? I doubt it. This is Bass Reeves. Bass Reeves was a marshal in Oklahoma in 1870. In Oklahoma, between 1870 and 1900, there were 200 marshals killed. There were 200 marshals killed in the United States. 130 of them died in Oklahoma. I'm not sure what the problem was in Oklahoma, but they were deadly for marshals. Bass Reeves was one black marshal who survived the entire time. The reason Bass Reeves is noticed is Bass Reeves used to wear disguises so he could get close to the people he was arresting, and he had over 3,000 arrests, so he could get close to the people he was arresting without them knowing who he was. Bass Reeves also had an assistant, a counterpart that went with him everywhere, who was an Indian. What does this remind you of? They're saying Bass Reeves was the prototype for the Lone Ranger. The man who had an Indian sidekick, who arrested multiple people, who was in a very dangerous situation and survived to live to an old age, and used his wits to outwit the bad guys. Nobody knows that perhaps the idea from the Lone Ranger came from Bass Reeves. Let me go back to prejudice is something that's in your mind when you grow up, when you learn things, when you see things, when your parents tell you things, when you see things on TV, when you see things in magazines. All that forms opinions in your head. And you can't stop and look at everything on a full-time scale and evaluate everything as you go along. When you drive down to Salem Avenue, you lock the doors because you see a lot of black people around and it could be dangerous. That's a stereotype, but there is a grounding of fact in a stereotype. That's the weird thing about stereotypes, is there usually is some basis of truth. That's the weird thing about all these fantastic stories that we hear on Facebook, all the terrible things that are happening in the world, the immigrants that are coming across the border, they're all carrying drugs, they're all rapists, they're all murderers. there is a grain of truth in that. Every once in a while, you'll see a story of an immigrant who killed somebody or raped somebody. There just was one in, I don't know, it was Georgia, I think, where some college girl was killed by an immigrant from Venezuela. There are things that happen, so we do not want to discount those and say that all immigrants are God-fearing, loyal, just people. But it is a tremendous minority, just like the regular population. There are good people and bad people. You don't automatically judge a person. Well, actually, let me put that back. When you walk up to somebody, you do automatically judge. You look at their hair, you look at their clothes, you look at their shoes, you look at their face. You automatically start making judgments and assumptions. Do they speak English? Do I speak English? Is it somebody I can trust? Is it somebody that I'll be friends with? If they're white, if they wear clothes like you do, if they have a posture like you do, you're automatically going to think, well, I can probably trust these people unless they give me a reason not to. If they're completely dressed strangely and look strangely and have a weird look on their face, you're automatically going to be defensive and on edge. You have to work your way through that. You have to decide, is this the way reality is, or is this something that my history and my past has put into my mind? And that is the problem we're having. Conservative legislatures are teaching people not to use critical thinking. They're teaching people to use automatic assumptions. Be angry at people crossing the border. What is the guy, Bernie, whatever, what's he on TV telling us? Our Secretary of State, there's something wrong with him. Don't vote for him for Senate because he doesn't want to deport 8 million immigrants. They're criticizing him for not deporting 8 million people. They're quoting him as saying the truth. They're quoting him as saying, you can't deport 8 million people. It's logically impossible. It's literally impossible to deport 8 million people. And yet, this is the advertisement running against him. This guy has common sense. He knows what the truth is. Vote for me because I'm an idiot. I believe that I'm going to tell you I'm going to deport 8 million people. I'm going to lie to you and appeal to your stupid, ignorant self, and you're going to vote for me because you like stupid, ignorant selves. What is going on with the people? And that's when I say there's some kind of virus infecting humanity. This is a perfect example. We're seeing it right here in Ohio right now. Okay, then we get to discrimination. You can have prejudiced thoughts. You don't have to act on them. But discrimination is acting on them. Let me look at, here's another one that I was going to do last, but we'll do it now. The one side, you have, how many percent, what was the percent of black and Mexican cowboys in the Old West? Minimum of 25%. The Old West was populated, the whole idea of cowboys, a lot of them, many of them were black cowboys. And basically, cowboys in the Old West were almost treated like slaves anyway. They worked for weeks at a time, sometimes never seeing the inside of a town. They got their wages, if they were lucky, once a month. And they took out the price of their food and their shelter and their clothes. They was taken out of that. It was almost like being an indentured servant. So, but it was a great tradition. We can go into a few other things. Very few cowboys carried guns. Most cities and towns in the Old West, if you'll notice, had gun laws. You're not allowed to open carry guns in the town, and the marshal enforced that. All these little myths that we have about the Old West and about the American history of everybody having a gun and more guns is more protection, all that stuff is just made up stuff that people have pushed on us, partially from Hollywood because it's fun, and partially because they want us to believe that it's very dangerous and you have to have a gun to protect yourself. On the other side is a black equestrian, a jumper, horse that rides horse jumps, or jumping horses, or 5-gated or 3-gated horses. I read a few stories of these ladies. There's very few of them because the prejudice is so strong. When they show up to a horse show, they think that this girl is a groom. She's the person who brings the horse around for the white girl to ride. And she says, no, this is my horse. And they actually say, well, how do you afford a horse? People actually say this to her. And I'd have to say, I would ask that question too, but not because she's black, because I know how much it costs to own a horse. And if you take your horse and travel to horse shows, your dad has to have a lot of money. That's all I can say. If you look at the, on 121, if you go between Brackettsville and New Madison, first of all, they build a horse barn, and then they have a little jumping training area down below. I would really like to talk to those people. They just built like an 80 by 160 barn, and you know what that barn is for? It's so they can practice in the wintertime inside. Some guy built a $40,000 barn. Well, somebody, I don't know if it was a guy, there I am being prejudiced, it might be a woman, it might be a family, who knows, but somebody built an 80 by 160 building so the kids can practice inside. I'm assuming, as many people as I see working there, that it must be a business. Whoever is doing the training must be, the people who are being trained as jumpers must be paying for that. But none of that is cheap. It is not cheap to own a horse. Just to keep a horse is not cheap. To have the trailer in the truck and to travel to horse shows is not cheap. So you really have to have a loving family to support you in that. And that's one of the reasons, primarily 99% of them are white girls. But there are black families who can afford it and black families who want to do it, but black families are looked upon as outliers, as people who, what are you doing here? You don't belong here. So, pardon me, I kind of wandered all over because I ran into that thing about the, my white privilege card is for sale, and I was really tempted to put some answers back, like I've talked to you, like maybe you don't recognize your white privilege when you drive down the street and don't get stopped. Maybe you don't recognize your white privilege when you go shopping in Macy's and nobody follows you through the store. But I thought I would lose a friendship if I did that, and I couldn't put it on anonymously, so I'm blowing it off here, so. All right, comments, questions? Is it making any sense? Does the difference between prejudice and discrimination make any sense? I hope it does.
Isn't prejudice more of a mindset? Discrimination is more systematic, how you carry it out.
Yes, it's exactly the difference. Mindset versus carrying it out. Discrimination is action. You can't discriminate against somebody unless you're acting. And this is what even the guy in the children's story said, and that's what we have to realize, that everybody is prejudiced. You can't escape prejudice. When people tell you, like he said, when people tell you, I don't see black or white, they're either fools or they're lying. Because when you see somebody, you know whether they're black or white, you know whether they're red, you know how they're dressed, you know how they speak. The difference is what you do about that. It's not the fact that you don't see it. The fact is, how do you treat them? You treat them with respect. And those interactions, you can see it all the time with police and black interactions. And there's fault on both sides. The police expect people to obey them no matter what, but I get so tired of seeing all these black drivers saying, you can't ask me for my ID. Well, yes, you can ask for your ID. Or what, can you step out of the car? No, you can't make me get out of the car. If the police officer has grounds, they can make you get out of the car. If a police officer stopped me and asked me to get out of the car, I would get out of the car whether he had grounds or not. Why create a situation which is going to be trouble? And some of these black people who've been killed, you've seen them, they get out of the car and they run. Now the police officers shouldn't shoot somebody just for running and kill them, but on the other hand, why would you get out of the car if you have a broken taillight? Why would you run? It just, there's problems on both sides, and I'm not saying there's not, and I'm not saying it's the victim's fault. And I'm not saying every cop is right, but I'm also not saying every cop is wrong. And I'm not saying every victim is wrong. You have to maintain critical thinking. You have to decide on each situation, where does the evidence lie? That's the whole point of our jury system, which, don't get me started on that. The Supreme Court is now deciding whether the President of the United States has a get out of jail free card, that the President of the United States can do whatever he wants. The Supreme Court is saying that. I hope Biden is listening, because if the Supreme Court says the president can do whatever he wants, I pray that he will take advantage of that. So, okay, now I've gone too far. All right, let's see, where are we? Offering if you have, oh, this is the first Sunday, so it's Fish Sunday. The fish plate is the fish plate, and the round plate is the church plate, so divide them up however you like. Fish goes to a worthy cause, and I've talked about this before. Some people take advantage of fish, but many people use it as it should be used.
Good to see you.
Till There Was You. Beautiful. Okay, our closing hymn is 211. We Are Climbing Jacob's Ladder.
Yeah, well, you can do that. You wanna play 212? Okay, all right.
round goes higher, higher. Every round goes higher, higher. We are climbing on. Can you do that in a round? That'd be an interesting song in a round. So, okay. Jacob's Ladder. Wherever we are, love is. As we enter another week of uncertainty in the world, let us remember that there is only one side, that of humanity and the planet Earth. May we pray for peace. May we raise our voices with our elected officials and engage as we can in acts of resistance. And may we remember to take very good care of ourselves, each other, and those we love. May we remember these words adapted from the Unity Prayer. The light of love surrounds us. Love enfolds us. The power of love protects us. Love watches over us. Wherever we are, love is. All right, the postlude. Our love is here to stay. Fits very good with everything we're doing. Snacks, donuts, coffee cake, pretty much a little bit of everything is back there. I'm going to try again. I keep trying to get this movie to play, and I'm going to try again to play. If it plays and you want to stay, fine. If not, if I know how to do it, the next time we actually announce a movie, then there will be a movie, maybe. Because I have nothing but trouble with electronics. And Emerson is never here to help me, so, yes.
The curve, that's called Walker's Curve. The old timers taught me that, and we had a fire run out there one time, electricity, and she was up in it, and I got up in that tower.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was up in it, man, I'm telling you, it was something else. That was a neat place. Now, the people's got that, they got a lot of money in horses.
Yep.
Right? That's what that's all about. That's me. How we got the name of Walker Curve? I tried to research it. I go around that curve 100 miles an hour myself just to try all these curves. When you go around it, it's called Walker's Curve.
That's Walker's
so everybody
Curve.
knows it. Walker Farm.
Was that-
Walker.
Christopher Walker. There we go.
Lane Tilla Walker.
See? I
Was that the big brick mansion?
Yeah.
That's the Walker Farm?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you
Old
remember,
China.
I remember the old barn.
See?
yeah, if you remember,
Comes out.
that barn that was there was a magnificent, it made out of brick, and it was so sad when they tore that barn down, but it was a huge, really, really nice barn. Yeah,
2 or 3 generations of Walkers there.
yep.
I didn't know all that. There you go.
So I'm assuming that's the people who are setting up the horse training thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of those gentlemen is active in the American Legion here as well.
Okay. Well, and there's what's that weird truck that with a big flag that parks out in front that like
That may be the sort of, well, I don't know.
that's what I'm curious about. It looks like a cross-country, expedition type thing.
Yeah, like demolition derby.
Yes, exactly.
Dylan Walker was a second, no, I don't know, I always want to look more about, what I've got up here is stuff I've heard over the years, because I was always curious about those. But I think it's the 2 generation walls. And Christopher Walker was one who, they built, that big, like almost looks like a little brick house.
I don't know, I always heard stories about that. There's
And they lived in there.
maybe there were like tunnels that went from the house to the barn or something,
Yeah.
and it was sort of like maybe a place on the Underground Railroad too, I don't know, yeah.
Well, I would love to see the inside.
Yeah,
Because some of
yeah.
those old houses, the rooms are so small.
Right, yeah,
And yet somebody has said, sometimes that one's got 3 floors, sometimes the 3rd floor is like a ballroom.
Yeah,
It's a big
right,
room.
yeah,
So
yeah.
It'd be really interesting to see sometimes.
now, I always heard that there was like, when that place was built, and then there's another place over there on Thomas Road, and the walk with Thomas, well, that was the Thomas farm on Thomas Road. There's a brick house there at the curb, and those people were sort of like in competition with each other when they were building those houses, I guess. I don't really know.
Yep.
I'm very prejudiced. I got more in common with Irish at second act